For your viewing pleasure, this broadcast of the Municipal Council meeting of Alpena is made possible by the funding provided by the City of Alpena. Thank you for your generosity.
Good evening, and welcome to the Alpena City Council meeting on February 18, 2019. Call the order, please.
Huss. Here. Johnson. Here. Nielsen.
Here.
Nowak.
Here.
And Walgora.
Here. Please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Any modifications to the agenda this evening? Approval of the minutes, but what? Yes. Oh, Joey, I didn't know if I'd do it now or when we got there.
Oh, I guess you would either way, yeah.
Let's do it.
Okay, that's fine.
Sorry. Approval of the minutes for open and closed session on February 4th, 2019. Any issues or changes? Thank you. Citizens appearing before council on agenda and non-agenda items tonight are allowed 5 minutes each to address your concerns. This is the only time you're allowed to address council tonight, with the exception of the public hearing for WG Benjey Industrial Facilities. Other than that, anyone? Consent agenda is bills to be allowed in the amount of $366. I'm sorry, that would be pretty cheap.
That'd be a deal.
We like that.
300.
Way to go in, huh?
Sorry, $366,177.19.
Just have a lot of past.
I move we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Cindy. Huss.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Nielsen.
Yes.
Nowak.
Yes.
And Walgora.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. No presentations, announcements, or proclamations this evening, so we'll move right to the public hearing. This is for WG Benjey Industrial Facilities Exemption Certificate application for property located at 316 and 318 Cavanaugh Street. I'll open the public hearing, first with a report from our Planning and Development Director, Adam Paul.
Good evening, Council. As you had in your packet, attached is a copy of the application filed by WG Benjey for an industrial facilities exemption certificate for their new facility at 316 to 318 Cavanaugh. The project entails the construction of a 10,800 square foot pre-engineered building for use of manufacturing space. Real property costs are estimated at $1,067,000 for the building site improvements and an additional $1,114,450 for personal property, and that's mainly equipment, for a total project cost of $2,181,450. It is estimated that an additional 12 new jobs would be created. Under the project qualifies for a 9-year abatement under the city's rating system that is printed out in front of you, just to see how they got to the 9-year mark. The proposed tax abatement would run December 31st, 2019 through December 30, 2028. Real property improvements will be taxed at 1/2 the full non-homestead tax rate. Local school millage, it is estimated that the exemption certificate would result in an initial tax savings of approximately $13,500 annually. Also attached is a separate IFT and monitoring agreement to be signed by the company as part of the IFT exemption certificate approval. The IFT agreement provides a means by which the city may request revocation of the exemption certificate by the State Tax Commission and may demand repayment of all or a portion of abated taxes if the commitments stipulated by the company in the application are not satisfied. Staff recommends support of the application based on the capital expenditure and job creation commitments by the company. The expansion of local industry provides both short and long-term benefits to the community. Obviously, we're going through the hearing right now, and so any affected taxing jurisdictions and public could comment on the application. Following the hearing, if council concurs with staff's recommendation, the attached resolution 2019-02 should be adopted. Once adopted, staff would prepare the necessary documentation to submit to the State Tax Commission for review and approval. And then in front of you, there was a small issue with the resolution I sent in the packet. So there's the updated copy is in front of you, as well as again that rating schedule to see how we got the numbers. So thank you here today as well. So if you have any questions, we're happy.
Can you just point out what the small problem was in here so we...
Absolutely. Within the first three lines, there was a random date thrown in the middle of a word. I believe it was regarding the hearing and notifying the local taxing jurisdictions. So I don't know how that got there. It was a cut-paste error. So.
Okay, thank you.
That's on the top top of page 2, the first whereas.
There we go.
Yeah.
If you look at, it's got February 19, 2019, just kind of inserted in the middle there, it doesn't belong.
Very good. Thank you, Adam. Please stand by. Any open public comment on the topic of Adam's presentation? Any written comments to the clerk's office?
No.
I'll close the public hearing and open this up for council discussion then. Ran this through the entire calculation process that, who developed that? Planning Commission developed that?
That was developed a number of years ago. I'm not entirely certain, to be honest, as far as who developed the rating scale, whether it was council or planning commission, but that was that way back in 2000. I know Greg had something to do with it.
Yeah, we did, and it's one that we know we're gonna update as well. It's somewhat outdated, but it works.
And I guess the only comment or question I have, Adam, for yourself is that this is an exemption for just the new updates, the new building and stuff like that. We're not exempting existing taxes or anything like that.
Correct. This only covers the new building, and then even then it's only half.
Okay.
So.
All right.
Yeah, I still feel that exemptions are a good tool to use when necessary, considering over $1 million and 12 new jobs.
I move we approve 2019-02.
Second.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noak?
Yes.
Walagora? And Hess.
Yes.
Motion carried.
And that included the authorizing the mayor to sign the IFT and monitoring agreement as well, or do we need a separate motion on that?
Well, if it wasn't mentioned before, I would do it separate. Have the mayor do that.
What was that one for? Have to authorize the mayor to sign the...
Monitoring agreement and the development agreement.
So moved.
Second.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noak?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Hess?
Yes.
And Johnson?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you, Adam. Next up is report of officers. First on the list is the amendment to the city manager appointment agreement. And I guess just to save some time and discussion, I ask that we table that item until at least our next meeting due to some mathematical questions I had for Greg. And Cindy and I spoke about it, just compensation-wise and how it affects his retirement and things of that nature.
And how it affects the pension.
His
And
pension.
it's something between the two of us, we can calculate at least close. I mean, it won't be exact. I just didn't think about it, so no problem tabling it, and we'll have the information for the next meeting.
I move we table item 11A.
Second.
Noak?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
Hess?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
And Nielsen?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next up is financial report for the quarter ending December 31st, 2018.
Okay, so this would be for the second quarter of the current fiscal year, which ended December 31st, 2018. The city should be at 50% of budget. So if you look at the chart that I attached, in comparison to the budget, we have received almost 63% of revenue. Revenue for general government is at 82% due to receiving over 91% of budget for property taxes. Ambulance revenue is lagging and is down significantly at this point as compared to last year. This is due to the timing of the reversing of journal entries. In past years, those entries were done at the end of the fiscal year, but we've changed that process so that revenues and expenses align with our budget and are not overstated throughout the fiscal year. I am assured by Chief Forbush that we will meet or exceed the budgeted revenue. The negative 73% of revenue for the lights department is due to this reversing entry. So if you're looking at this little chart, you see there's a red flag there, and it's negative 73%. That's because no revenue has been received there, and we had to reverse out an invoice that hasn't been paid. So, otherwise, the light department hasn't received any revenue. The Parks and Rec department's revenue is low at just under 33%, due in part to budgeting for receipt of a CZM grant that we have now learned will not come to fruition. So because of that, it makes that percentage lower. Across the general fund, expenditures are at 51%. Building authority is high at 87%, but as stated before in the previous report, that is due to the one-time payment made earlier in the fiscal year. Fire department expenses are slightly high at 57% due to the annual equipment rental fees hitting the books. Expenses for the lights department are low due to not yet expending any of the budgeted capital outlay money, along with a decrease in expenses for streetlights power. Other financing uses are also below budget due to transfers to other funds that haven't happened yet. Then on the back side of that report, in regards to the cash balances and investments, the water fund is no longer negative as a result of a change in the procedure of recording the water and sewer receipts to the appropriate fund instead of making the sewer fund whole as it was done in the past. So now we're truly allocating where the payment revenue is going. It used to all just go right to sewer, make it whole, and then what was left would go to the water fund. So now we're doing it the way it should be, truly what it's for. The building inspection fund has a positive cash balance this year as compared to the previous 2 years where the fund was negative. The capital improvement fund is nearly depleted after using the monies to upgrade the HVAC system at City Hall. The retiree health care fund had a larger increase this year as compared to the previous 2 years, and that's as a result of increasing the city's contribution to a higher percentage of payroll than in previous years. The balance in the employees' retirement fund is higher by over $2 million as compared to a year ago. Recently, a change in investment advisors for the pension system was made. During the transition, assets were sold and purchased, which resulted in a loss of $922,499 in the value of investments, along with a reclassification of the types of investments. So I know that sounds a little bit contradictory that we're up $2 million, but yet we're down in the investments. So if you were to total the government bonds, the corporate bonds, the common stock, the other investments in the previous year and compare it to the fixed income and equities, there's a difference of $922,000. Also, you see that our cash is up because at the end of the year, that cash was sitting in Comerica waiting to be transferred. So overall, the city's finances are doing well. We're ahead on revenue and slightly above target for expenses as of December 31st. Any questions?
No questions.
I do not, other than just a note to the general public as far as the reversing of the journal entries. This will be the only fiscal year that adjustment will be recognizable. Like next, after the end of the fiscal year, you'll
They're done every year. So as part of the closing process, any revenue that we have not received as of June 30th, we accrue it back, but then we have to reverse it in the current fiscal year. So the way it was done before, those reversing entries didn't happen until June 30th. But now we did them at the beginning of the year, like they're supposed to be done. Because otherwise, if you have revenue sitting in there, it's making all of these reports look higher than what they really are. So it's just trying to align it better.
It's skewing your results,
Yeah.
basically.
Yep.
Okay.
Except for you, -73%.
And I also noted, I guess, just for a notice, that ordinarily when we do this report, the charts and graphs are available on a printout for guests. So is this added to our website? Will people be able to go to reference these?
It's in the packet. And then I always do hard copies on the desk downstairs.
So they are down there?
Not yet. I
Oh.
wanted to approve before I actually put them out.
Oh, okay. That's fine. They'll be available.
Right. If anybody really wants one, I could probably email it to them.
All right, I have no other questions.
You want to receive and file?
Yes, please.
I move we receive and file the budget.
Financial
With the
report.
financial report. Okay.
Second.
Walagora?
Aye.
Hess?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
And Noack?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Committee. Next up is communications and petitions. First is Target Alpena Development Corporation semi-annual report. Jim Clarich.
Thanks for having me. So I'm really going to wrap, I think we have a package from our semi-annual report is in your package, and I really wanted to highlight just maybe 3 or 4 things out of there on what we've been really working on. A lot of activity and a lot of efforts are really being spent along the lines of rehabilitation of existing buildings downtown, not only to house new businesses, but also to create more residential housing options downtown. So we're working very diligently with Adam to that end, and that also kind of leads me into the area of Alpena Power Company site, the former Alpena Power Company site. Basically the same thing as saying, hey, we're still pursuing mixed-use options for that property. A lot of people might step back and say, hey, it can't be that hard, right? We have a dire need for housing in downtown and that kind of thing, but at the same time, what we need to understand is we need to balance that need for, or understand the balance between the need for residential housing and our ability to fill the commercial spaces created when those buildings go up. And so that leads into other, questions about parking and how do you fit people where and all of that kind of stuff. Like for instance, on the Alpena Power Company site, that may be 17,000 square foot footprint on the first floor alone, which would be, multiple businesses, when the average business, in our downtown is probably under 2,000 square feet. So anyway, we're working hard, not only to create the opportunity for new residential options for downtown, but we're also working very hard to find suitable tenants that would fill, to fill those first floors. So that's kind of put us a little bit in the, let's say, back, or it's taking a little bit longer than we initially thought it might, but just so you know, that's kind of the balancing act that we're working with right now. We are confident a suitable solution will be found for numerous sites that we're working on downtown. Commerce Park, we sold 2 lots this past 6 months. We have interest expressed to us just a couple weeks ago in another 2. If those sell, we'll be down to 3. There'll only be 3 lots left in Commerce Park, Commerce Industrial Park, which will be very exciting. We met a lot of developers regarding potential redevelopment sites for other attached housing opportunities throughout the area, in the city, outside of the city, etc. Some of them encompass existing buildings, some of them are just vacant lots, but we are working through some of those opportunities. I'll jump into the SBDC, our Small Business Development Counseling efforts. We've assisted a lot of businesses in a variety of ways over the last 6 months. Business startup, business expansions, counseling, reviewing relocation options for them, and so on. some of those statistics are, as I outlined, if you looked at the city alone, 44 clients served, 91 counseling hours, 3 business starts, 5 jobs, and about 46,500 in capital creation. When you look at the county as a whole, you could add in another 38 clients, another 115 hours, 5 more business starts, 7 more jobs, and another 375,000 in capital creation. That's pretty good, but what's really exciting is what's happened really since the first of the year. From SBDC, our counseling efforts, right now in the last, since January 1st, so roughly, 7 weeks? We're at 13, we have 13 new clients just in that 6 or 7 week period that have approached Carl Bordley for his services. And those are wrapped around the same ideas, whether they're startups or whether they're business expansions. We've closed, I think in addition to that, we've closed 2 new loans in the last 6 weeks as well. So it's pretty exciting stuff. Now with the, it speaks a little bit more about our housing needs. There's been a lot of movement in housing in Alpena over the last 12 months. We've had companies actually come in and are purchasing residential homes, lots of them. And they're remodeling, rehabilitating them, and putting them out into the rental market, which is good for us and it's good for the city. We expect more of that. We've been approached by other companies interested in doing that in our market. So when you look at that and you say, how do I build upon that? Well, I think it really will complement what we do with downtown and and loft apartments and second story opportunities in town. If you looked at statistics-wise, our housing markets this past 6 months, or even going back over the last couple of years, have set records residentially as far as number of sales. You're seeing our the prices that we're getting for those homes, or our median sales prices, are rising. Supply and demand, there's not a lot of inventory and there's a lot of demand, and those are all good things and they're all good trends for us. So. That's kind of really what I wanted to take a few minutes to just discuss with you tonight. I can talk about Kmart, I can talk about a lot of different things, but we continue to are hopeful in the surrounding area with Kmart to fill some of those vacancies. We're working to that end. And again, I'm pretty hopeful that we'll probably over the next 6 or to 12 months see some movement to that end as well.
Question, Jim. The needs of current businesses right now for employees in this area. I know that we've discussed that number in the past and so on. Do you have an idea of where that currently stands within the Alpena area?
We could always use more people. And it lends it to not only are we, let's say, our employers importing people. I'll say people are traveling great distances to work in Alpena. But at the same time, the partnership between the chamber and our school systems to, number one, create opportunities for the students to learn soft skills, whether that's resume writing and all of that kind of stuff, and work their way into that, into CTE programs, into being, employable to a certain degree, are a lot more robust than they've been in the past. So I think we're doing a pretty good job as far as broadcasting the opportunities to the outside world that are available in Alpena, because we're getting people to move into the area. About 30% of our residential sales, in real estate sales, are coming from people from outside the area. Which is, that you haven't heard of in a long time. So we're getting a lot of that. At the same time, with let's say the expansions that are being created, or opportunities created at the hospital, are creating opportunities for additional people to move into the area. And then, I'd like to back that up, I think we're doing a pretty robust job throughout whether it's Alpena Public Schools, the surrounding school systems to a certain degree as well as ACC to create a pretty big bubble as far as employees are concerned.
Thank you.
Any
questions. Appreciate your report is fantastic as always.
Thank you.
All encompassing. There's a few things obviously on your report that you didn't cover. But I don't really have any specific questions about it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Receive five?
I believe we
Yeah,
usually
because
do.
it's required.
It's
for
required,
the
yeah.
Contract, so if we will.
I move we receive and file.
Second.
Hess?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Noak?
Yes.
Walagora?
Okay,
Motion carried.
thank you. Next up is a project update by Larry Clark of the South Bay Alpena Group. Larry, thank you.
Hello, everybody. I've been here for a little while.
Hello.
Greg, thanks for putting me on the agenda. Appreciate that. Always good to see you. Always good to see all of you. Thanks for making me feel so welcome here. I'd like to start off just real briefly with some economic news. We've been working on a couple different things. We're happy to see that the U-Haul place went into the old Caesar's Pizza place of years ago. I hear stories of peanut shells being on the floor there and people really longing for that place, but it has a U-Haul place in it now. We've been working with the owner of the old Dunkin' Donuts to encourage him, you might say, to go ahead and open up that restaurant. He has done some tile work in there. He has brought in some equipment and such. We're hopeful that the Kmart, something will happen with that fairly soon. That certainly would be a spark plug for 23 South in the whole area. We're also planning, of course, another highway cleanup coming up in the springtime or early summer, depending on whenever that is, when we get out there without freezing. But I came here really today to talk to you about some of our parks and recreational projects that we're working on. If you look at the first page, that of course is pretty much our project scope area. Phase 1 of what we're doing really goes from Squaw Bay up to Island Drive. Phase 2 is Island Drive up to Michigan Avenue. And first of all, with Phase 2, I'm working on that now to create a bike path, a loop, that would go from Mischiquiwas down Michigan Avenue, go behind Kmart on the power company right away that's been recently gated and graded, down Harbor Drive into Island Drive. And we'll be working with the County Road Commission to see if we can possibly do something with signage and things like that. There's a meeting tomorrow, actually, I'll be making a presentation there. But the goal there is to, bicyclists love loops. And the second thing is, we would, for families and such, would be bypassing the roller coaster bike path that's on the east side of 23 in the commercial area. Someday we do hope to flatten that out, but it is on the radar. If you move on to the next page, two projects are really coming along very nicely. Our two major projects. One's a bike path extension, and the other is a 45th parallel park. This is a drawing from R.S. Scott regarding the bike path extension. We've had a couple of discussions and a meeting with the DEQ regarding wetlands permits, and they encouraged us to keep a straight line with the bike path extension going from Island Drive down to South Partridge Point Road. So that'll pretty much keep it along the east side of 23. Along those, just south of Island Drive, we met with MDOT, and that meeting went well. I have their blessing. We are going to put the bike path there approximately the same distance from the road as the current bike path. So if our initial goal was to run it along the power company right away, but that would be pretty much going through some people's dining rooms through there. So especially the first couple houses, so we're going to end up probably putting culverts in the drainage ditch there, keeping it a reasonable distance from the road, of course, for safe reasons, until it gets down to just east of Pole Road. And that's where a township water line comes in, and we'll zigzag, we're cut over to the power company right away, and we'll meander down the power company right away, if you will, as much as possible and make it interesting. That will be a nice stretch of tree bike path and such that goes through there. So we're in the process of working on that, as I say. The next step also in addition to working with MDOT, and another meeting we'll need to have with the DEQ coming up here in the spring. We have hired an environmental firm. Environmental firm is Goebel and Associates out of Charlevoix. The preliminary work is focusing on endangered species. Of course, we're not going to be able to tell much about that until 8 feet of snow goes off the ground and such around out there. So there are a couple things of concerns, but we think we can work around it and mitigate it. So that's coming up as well. Once we get that done, we will submit the survey and we'll prepare the survey and submit the application. Any questions on the bike path extension? I don't enable bikers and walkers, if you will, to go from the bridge down to Squaw Bay. That's pretty exciting. Most of you know, but MCOG was, through the Coastal Zone Management folks from the DEQ, awarded a planning grant to plan a pathway from Oscoda to Alpena. I'm kind of calling that the Iron Bell spur route, and the Iron Bell technically bypassed us as it came up from Belle Isle up to Oscoda and went west to Grayling and then up 75. So this will connect, the Iron Bell spur will connect with the existing routes and what we're doing to enable bikers and walkers to go up the whole eastern side of the state. Once they get to the bridge, of course, the ultimate plan is for them to be able to go across the UP to Ironwood. The next page shows a preliminary drawing of the 45th parallel / Peter Petelia Memorial Park. I've talked to Karen. She likes the idea about naming a park after Pete. We all do. The only thing that's not indicated here is a welcome center. And that's going to really be the center point of this whole project, is a nice welcome center. It'll be probably built up on stilts so you can see out over the bay. And it'll be something that all of Alpena can be really look forward to, be proud of. We envision it having information, of course, on attractions in the area, activities in the area, information on flora and fauna, and fish and shipwrecks, and that sort of thing. So then the rest of it, you can see, is depending, of course, on the survey. We do have a letter of intent that has been submitted for the property. So we're in pretty good shape there. Gentleman is pretty excited about this park, as he's a retired manager from the Detroit Metro Park System, so he'd like nothing better than seeing this property turned into a park. So that was very fortunate. The entrance, as you can see, will be on South Partridge Point Road, and that'll just eliminate a lot of headaches from trying to put an entrance on 23 with the speed limit being what it is, trying to put in turn lanes into wetlands, and so forth. So, assuming this can all be surveyed above the ordinary high water mark, we're good to go. If not, well, maybe not so good. Okay, then the other thing I wanted to mention to you in closing is a small park we're working on. If you haven't been out there, maybe some of you have, particularly duck hunters, and out at Frog Lane at the end of Partridge Point. That's 52 acres there. It's owned by the DNR Forestry Division. They've given us the approval to proceed with a approximately 5-acre day-use park. We've widened the road over time. We've worked with the DEQ Forestry Division. Cody Stevens has been just awesome to work with. Getting wetlands applications, permit applications for culverts, and improving the road. We've brushed it. Volunteers have brushed it and got it into and gravelled it 3 times now to get it into a good shape so you can take just about any kind of vehicle down there. We did have an unfortunate incident with graffiti all over everything this summer, which was kind of a challenge to take off with no electricity or water, for power washers out there. We also got permission from the DEQ and the township to put in a picnic table out there. We're going to see how that goes. ACC donated it through their Concrete Tech program. We're very thankful to Don McMaster and his people. And that's coming along. I hope to get to the point where I can start working on some signs for the entrance to the park and also on US 23. Any questions at all? Okay, thanks for your support. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Larry. It's always good to get an update on how that is going over there. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is unfinished business. We have ordinance number 19-441 to prohibit all recreational marijuana facilities within the city of Alpena.
This is a ordinance of the City of Alpena, Michigan, amending Chapter 18 Businesses, Article 1, in general, Section 18.1, moratorium on issuance of permits or licenses for sale or dispensation of medical marijuana in the city by repeal of same and adoption of new language in lieu thereof. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council of the City of Alpena, State of Michigan as follows. Chapter 18, Businesses, Article 1, Section 18.1 is hereby repealed in its entirety, and in its place the following provisions are hereby adopted. 18.1, prohibition of marijuana businesses and establishments within the city. Subsection A, the intent of this ordinance is to exercise the City of Alpena's authority to prohibit the establishment or operation of marijuana establishments within the city as such facilities are defined in the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act. B, prohibitions pursuant to the Act, Section 6.1, the city prohibits the establishment or operation of any and all categories of marijuana establishments within its boundaries. C, the effective date, this ordinance shall be in full force and effect immediately due to the need to protect public health, safety, welfare, and the orderly administration of the affairs of the City of Alpena. And any ordinance or parts of any ordinance in conflict with any provisions of this ordinance are hereby repealed. And the provisions of this ordinance shall take effect immediately after being adopted by the Municipal Council and shall be duly published within 10 days of adoption. Normally, we would have first reading, but when we discussed this issue recently with council, and council directed that it be, that this particular ordinance be prepared, I took the liberty to ask the council to do the public health, safety, and welfare to make this effective immediately. If council is not comfortable with doing that today, we could consider this first reading and have it come back on a normal schedule within 2 weeks. But I thought it was clear where council's direction was when we met recently on the issue. So it doesn't have to take effect immediately, but that's the way it's written as of this moment.
It's just the beginning, medical marijuana, and my understanding was this was for recreational marijuana.
Yeah, this is for recreational. What we did is Section 18.1 we adopted back in, I'm going to say 2010. And that was the moratorium on medical marijuana, and then we extended the moratorium on medical marijuana. So since Section 18, Article 1 under businesses already had marijuana in it, we had the other provisions, I think provisions 2 through 30 reserved for future use. Rather than keep that moratorium language in there and continue to carry it through in our ordinances, the thought was just repeal that in its entirety and replace it with this new Section 18.1. So this is, all this does is repeal the moratorium on medical marijuana, which has actually already expired by its terms.
It's a long time ago.
So,
This won't actually affect that.
It will
That's
not.
an opt-in situation where.
Right.
yeah.
This was done when,
Okay.
after the first initiated law, and there was a lot of questions about whether dispensaries were allowed, which eventually the court said, no, they weren't allowed under the law, but it was unknown. So the city passed that moratorium, and it was extended, 6 months? And so it's been technically expired for, probably about 6 years or more, maybe even 8 years.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah.
And in the event now, obviously, we have the planning commission is going to look into medical marijuana facilities specifically. So if I'm correct, then if that were to take any kind of effect, then this ordinance would have to be changed more towards recreational if we wanted to stay with the moratorium on recreational, but possibly open up one of the avenues for the 1 or 5 of the medical. Then this would this would.
Yeah,
you would have
and
to-
and we still have.
Which you would have had to anyhow.
Yeah, and we still have section 18-2 through, I think, 18-30 reserved for
So there's
future
plenty.
use. Yeah, so we would add it in there, probably section 18-2 at that point.
I might have to apologize to a couple people that I told you that this was just the first reading tonight because it's so standard
That's
for
what I
that to be the first reading. One of them was media, I think, somebody on the media, so I don't think we're in any kind of big rush to do this, just so it's, just so for transparency's sake and for the fact that I maybe accidentally made a couple of incorrect statements, I would just as soon table this one
Or just make it first reading.
to make this a first reading and make our decision on it.
I thought it was
understand where
also-
Bill, and I apologize.
Oh, that's fine, yep.
I also thought it was just first reading and
Okay.
that it would be adopted
Let's,
the next meeting.
I'd
So
appreciate
then I
that
would
if we
need
could
to teach us how.
do first
I
reading.
will, I'll just
You will?
amend that.
Okay.
So I'll just make the amendment to the end of it that would basically say that, just like ordinance 442, it would say it will take effect 10 days after being adopted and duly published.
Okay.
And we'll do that second reading at the, I guess it'd be the March
Fourth.
meeting.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And since this is first reading, we'll just move on to the next.
And then unless there's any other changes or any other
Oh,
that you wanted to consider,
on that one?
yeah,
Oh, I did.
okay.
Then we'll move on to the ordinance 19-442 to prohibit use of marijuana in public places within the city.
But
of
I guess I do have one question.
Oh, go ahead.
Yep.
We're using, because the state is inconsistent. Under medical marijuana, they use marijuana with an H. Under the recreational, they go back to a J.
Did they?
Yes. So, is there any particular way we want to spell this?
I noticed that we spelled it with an H,
H.
probably because, the first time.
Right, because the
state-
law, back then, the first
This-
law used an H.
But only the state of Michigan.
Yeah, right.
Dictionary doesn't show it. with-
No. So I don't know if you.
I did not look at the dictionary,
I-
but I thought that had been universally accepted in Webster's that you could spell it with either a J or an H.
But they did it specifically that way when they did the medical marijuana initiative. It had an H. The recreational is back to a J as far as I know.
Laws in the books of the state are spelled with J. Even the state, other than their official documents, have now used the spelling with the H in it. So just to add to the confusion,
Sure.
they
Use
with the
both.
exception of official documents, they spell with an H. So
So
I will
most
balance.
pharmacists probably won't carry.
No, but I know when they did the recreational, everything was with J in it, on that one. Whatever. I don't-
We could spell it both ways, marijuana or marijuana.
You know,
I don't think it has.
it's relatively annoying on the state level, to be honest with you.
Right.
But as far as your legal counsel.
I think if the official, if most of the official correspondence has it spelled with an H, we should probably stick with the H. Now, I don't know that, I'm basing that on what Adam has just announced. I guess I'm not 100% sure if it's got a J in it or an H in it.
Put both of them.
Yeah, put H, and then in parentheses right next to it, put J.
We can refer this back to our city attorney to do this proper research.
You can fix it by the next one if you want
Okay.
to change it.
If I-
Do it.
It's not gonna change the intent of the
No.
ordinance, so
Right.
if you change it because you think it's best by our next meeting.
Okay, that's fine. All right.
I didn't notice it.
I-
I didn't notice it before, even though I read it.
Okay, this is ordinance 19-442. It's an ordinance of the City of Alpena, Michigan, amending Chapter 54 Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 1 in general, to add Section 54-11. Be it ordained by the Municipal Council of the City of Alpena, State of Michigan as follows. Chapter 54 Offenses and Miscellaneous Provisions, Article 1 in general. Section 54-11 Marijuana and Marijuana Accessories. A, no person shall consume, including smoking, cultivate, distribute, process, sell, or display marijuana in any form or marijuana accessories in a building owned or operated by the city of Alpena. B, no person shall consume, including smoking, marijuana in any form in a public place within the boundaries of the city of Alpena, including but not limited to any street, sidewalk, highway, alley, park, or parking lot located therein, or the city marina or city beaches. And C, any person violating this section shall be responsible for a civil infraction and shall be assessed a civil, it should say fine, not to exceed $500. The provisions of this ordinance shall take effect 10 days after being adopted by the municipal council and duly published. And this is first reading as well.
I actually have some thoughts on this. When we talked about prohibiting it, I was under the assumption that we were discussing smoking it in public, on a sidewalk, at a beach. This is in any form. Now, whether it's medical or recreational, is a legal substance to own and possess and have on your person. If someone is taking medicine that may be in a pill form, if they're having an edible that could be medicinal or recreational, I don't feel that it's our position to say that they can't consume that in a public place. It could be their medication for the day, they could be vacationing here, they could be, so to say that someone cannot consume any form of it while they're in any public place, I think that goes too far. So I don't know, that's my thought on it, and I guess I'd like some input on that.
No, you make a good point.
That's a good point.
Whether someone lives here or is traveling here, they may be staying here, they may be staying in a public space. And if it's whether it's medical or recreational, if it's not affecting anyone else, smoking primarily, we said the smoke bothers, it can affect other people, it can impact other people directly. Otherwise, saying any form, I don't think that's makes sense, or is, I don't think it goes too far. So that's my thought on it.
Suggestions?
No, I mean, it's a good point.
It's a very good point.
I got hooked on the misspelling, so I wasn't. I really wasn't, to be honest with you, really considering all of that. But our intent a few weeks ago when we discussed this probably was more on the smoking it in, just because it's distributed and the smell in the air and
Whether it's smoke or if it's vaping, it still has an impact on people around you. Like even on the medical side of it, there are people that get pills and it'd be illegal. Not that the police are going to be walking by looking at what your pill bottle, but ultimately this would say it's illegal to do that.
Yeah.
To take your medication, whether it's a pill form or an edible form that is part of your pain management because you have cancer, and saying you can't have that while you're at the beach all day with your grandkids. And I don't think that's something that we should say is illegal.
So you'd be suggesting a change to say, no person shall consume through smoking and or vaping in any form or in a public place within the boundaries of the city of Alpena. You comfortable with that?
I think that those are things that can affect other people and would be clearly an impact, but otherwise, as a legal substance, I don't see how we can say that we can't have it. And like I said, it may not come up, but if it does, it still shouldn't be illegal to be doing so, in my opinion. And, we've had people reach out to us, quite a few people that know a lot of cancer patients, other patients who have really relied on medical marijuana to improve their quality of life, and to say that if they happen to spend the day at the beach, or if they're whatever they're doing, if they're in a public space, that they can't utilize that medicine, or even recreationally. I don't feel it's my business if someone's eating a candy bar and what's in it. It's unless if they start acting funny, well, that's different. And if they're disrupting the peace, but otherwise, for a legal substance, I don't see how we can prohibit that. I don't know if other communities how they have done it in their communities, if they've had this on the books, but that's my thought.
Do you want me to respond? Okay.
Please.
We did consider whether we wanted to do it in any form. The thought was that any form would include people walking, for instance, down the street, and consuming marijuana edibles. We also talked about, obviously council was going to have a crack at this, and if you weren't comfortable with it, then we'll modify it accordingly. The other issue, though, that I think it creates and that we discussed was the enforcement of the edible portion of it, how we would, it'd be probably difficult to enforce because the marijuana edibles come in many different forms now. For instance, suckers are very common now, and so how would you know that somebody that's walking down Second Avenue in front of, let's say, the Center Building or any other of our business establishments, how do we know that they were consuming a marijuana edible versus consuming just a regular lollipop? And so it does create some enforcement issues when you're talking about the edible products. But whatever council's pleasure is, if you're not comfortable in the current form and you want an amendment to it or rewritten, I will do that.
What are the laws for drinking alcohol in public or any other mind-altering substance? What are the laws for that?
Yeah, you can't walk down Second Avenue with an open beer and drink it. I mean, that's, there's an open intoxicant statute. Now, there are some, municipalities, for instance, downtown development authorities that have allowed you to consume in public places. As an example, during the Sunrise Suds tap takeover, because we closed the street off, we let people consume in the public street there that we normally wouldn't allow that to happen.
The band shell, the beach.
Yeah, so there's certain areas that we allow it to happen, but generally, you can't walk up and down the street with an open beer. Now, with that being said, you can walk down the street with a cup and it might have beer in it, and nobody necessarily knows that. So it's not so much doing it, it's in the manner in which you do it that may bring attention to yourself, that then, if you're walking down the street with a cup, whether it's has beer in it or some other substance, if you're being disorderly and that draws your attention to our police force, then, you may ultimately be arrested for disorderly conduct if you're intoxicated in that public place. But once again, that's more of an enforcement issue than it is, whether we want to allow it or not. But generally, you can't walk into City Hall with a Budweiser in your hand. So.
There's also looking at the medical side of it, where alcohol is not a recognized medicine that's prescribed, and if someone is prescribed Vicodin, that's a controlled substance, and they can take it while they're sitting on the sidewalk, without any of it's their own prescription. So again, it's just a matter of looking. It is, I like looking at that way. It makes sense to a degree, but at the same time, the medical side of it, it is a different situation than even alcohol.
I guess I would say, personally, I think my intent and agreement with the ordinance was probably definitely more towards visibly and sensory knowing that that's what that person is doing. So we're not normalizing it in our streets to children and or the effects of the smoke that somebody might not be that thrilled about. So my intent was that. Plus, I can't imagine that we're going to be able to enforce something as written as it is, like Bill mentioned. You won't know whether a person opens up and takes an Advil or takes their medical marijuana, nor am I concerned.
Actually, I don't think it should be illegal either, I guess that's what I'm saying. It
Right.
would be under this statute.
So with that said, I would be fine to just make the wording include smoking and vaping.
Did they vape on the marijuana?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
I heard
good
it from
deal.
a
Okay,
friend.
okay.
Oil thing.
Yeah, it is, yeah, it's.
Okay.
And a lot of times it doesn't smell. either, the vaping. So there again, I don't know how the enforcement works with that either. You know, we all recognize, well, the most of us recognize the smell of marijuana when someone's smoking it, but not necessarily when someone's vaping it, from my understanding. You won't. I'm not sure what will work. I just know what my intent was as far as introducing it on our streets and parks and.
Well, I just think if you change it to no person shall consume by smoking or vaping marijuana in a public place.
Yes, sir. I'm fine with that as well.
And my only suggestion was if we want to have Chief Jet chime in, give, well, not,
We always bring
Yes, we're gonna put you on the spot.
Yeah, I don't want to, I'd just soon get a prepared response from you.
Yeah, I would like that.
Okay.
I would prefer that, please.
Let's,
and not that this is necessarily part of this, but because vaping was mentioned, I know Officer Marquardt, it's become an issue at the high school, and the law is not clear as to vaping. So it's kind of a gray area right now about how we enforce that there, and it has created some problems for the school. So.
The fact is, it would be illegal for 18-year-olds to do that. And,
Unless they have a medical marijuana card.
right. But how in the world, I don't want my child exposed to that. Nor do I want them exposed to cigarette smoke. And they have a right not to be exposed to that. People who don't want to use it. So why on earth do we open the door and then say, it's like opening a barn door and talking to all the animals and saying, don't come out. Why open the door if you can't enforce it, if you can't do anything about it? Or if that's all you'll be doing, you know. Everybody else's rights stop where mine start. I don't want to infringe on anybody's rights, but I don't want to breathe that stuff, and I don't want my children to breathe it, or my grandchildren, or my dog for that matter. I just think it's like cigarette smoke or any other pollutant. You don't want to have it in your system, and you have a right not to have it in your system.
so it sounds like your intent of this ordinance is the same as what you're saying.
Yes.
And we've, obviously, as a government, we can only control so much, so I can't really respond to some of your questions. But what we can control is possibly some language that's, if smoking and vaping doesn't cut it, then possibly come up with some awesome legal terms that keeps what you're doing from affecting what I'm doing.
Right. Any other use? Yeah, but smoking and the vaping.
I'm gonna guess that
I can't
smoking
think
and
of
vaping would probably do that.
At least that.
I don't know, but I welcome a response at some point from both yourself and Chief Jack. Perhaps at the next meeting.
Yes.
Let's do that.
What I would suggest then is, I will modify this in light of the comments of council. Also, that will give Chief Jett a chance to, put his 2 cents worth in as well, and then we'll bring it back to you and see if it's satisfactory at that point, and if not, then we'll bring it back again if we need to.
Sounds fair.
So we're not calling this a first reading then?
I'm gonna say no. Let's just, we'll first read it again next time, as modified, and that gives additional time for thought and reflection, also gives additional chance for law enforcement to give its perspective on the enforceability of it and what their thought process is as well.
Okay.
And you would then consider 19441 a first reading. This one will be the only one that we're going to be modifying.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you, Bill. New business, proposed extension of the management and response interlocal agreement with Presqu'île Township. Chief Chief Forbush.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I am Bill Forbush, your fire chief, and I'd like to give you a report after almost 3 years of the Presque Isle project, where we're at, what we still need to accomplish, and really the tremendous success that we've had. I'd like to introduce Mr. Richard Nowak, who's the board-appointed chair of the fire board for Presque Isle Township, and he's going to say a few words when I get done with my spiel. So the Presque Isle Township Fire Department, as you remember, was a thriving independent nonprofit. Years ago, they ran into problems that independent nonprofits sometimes do and failed. They were closed for several years, and there was no service in the area except for that came from other communities on mutual aid, kind of a one-way mutual aid, because it wasn't mutual. 3 years ago, Presque Isle Township asked the city of Alpena to enter into an interlocal agreement to manage, rebuild, and respond in Presque Isle for a limited time period. And in exchange for that service, they pay the city a $35,000 a year fee. Most of the service that the city provides is done by the chief or deputy chief, who are both salaried and get no additional compensation. So there really isn't a lot of cost to it, but it certainly is not taking services away from city residents or providing service outside the city without being properly compensated. The contract was to rebuild the department, and we've gone from an empty station with about 3 million dead flies in it, and that was it. No trucks, no equipment, no nothing. To a thriving, bustling station now with 22 volunteers, 4 apparatus, 3 specialty units, trailers for pump, light, and air. We've been able to train all of the personnel, or almost all of the personnel, I should say, to the firefighter 1 and 2 level, or to the medical first responder level. We also have several EMTs, a paramedic, and a physician's assistant so far. So we're doing very well up there in that regard. We've just started some of the specialized training. We have a couple of ice rescue technicians, but that really isn't the top priority. We had to get fire taken care of first before we worked out other things. The picture on the left is our training burn last summer on Long Lake. Went very, very well, gave the folks some good hands-on experience. And the other shots, you might notice some Alpena shots in there as well. Some of the training took place right here at the Alpena Fire Department as well. What we provide is a safety net to make sure that we respond if no one's available. That doesn't happen anymore. It did in the beginning. We mentor the volunteers with experienced AFD personnel, kind of shadowing them one-on-one so that they can see what to do and how to be more efficient at it. And we provide administration and command so that there's always an experienced fire officer on a scene or on a training evolution to assure that things go right. We've got 4 apparatus at this point. The 3,000-gallon tanker we actually bought from Byron Township for $30,000. It's a $300,000 truck. The other 3 were all donated, and we put some money into fixing them, but we've got a pretty good fleet at very little money to start with. Over time, we'll start to get some new apparatus, and in fact, we have a pickup truck on order that we're going to build into a rescue squad. It'll be a little bit better than the brush truck. We use the brush truck as well. Our volunteers, however, I should mention we were also doing some pub ed. We did a couple of open houses. Kids love that stuff, and so we have it there just as we do here in Alpena. And I might mention as a sidebar that our community risk reduction program with Captain Andy Marceau is really taken off. And you'll be hearing lots and more on what he's doing. He's doing a great, great job. But in a much smaller scale, Presque Isle does some of those things as well, using our volunteer personnel, Todd Adrian in one, and Lauren Scudder in the other shot there. We also have been responding to about 70 emergency calls a year, which is twice what they had before the department reopened. So the citizens are aware that we're there and are calling for help when they need it. We've got quite a advanced traffic control program. You'd be surprised how much traffic control is a problem on 23. Any kind of an emergency, it's a take your life in your hands. And so we've got the emergency scene ahead, and flares and cones and wands and all the stuff that you need to properly take care of that. I was surprised when I moved up here that that's a fire thing. It's a police thing downstate, but it's a fire thing up here. Not enough police officers, I think, is the bottom line. That was our birth announcement there when we put our first, second trucking service. I thought that was kind of cute, proud new parents. So we've come a long way, we've done a lot of good, and at this point, the only remaining problem is that the volunteer staffing that we have is all new. We started it 3 years ago, some of them have been there 3 years, but 3 years isn't quite ready to command an incident. And so over the next year, if you approve it, we're going to continue monitoring them, provide some additional training for the officers. We recently promoted 3 lieutenants, we're going to make a 4th lieutenant here shortly, and try and get them geared up so that a year from now they can stand on their own. They're ready to respond, they're doing it, they've got all the basic equipment that they need. They just need a little bit more experience for the person in charge. Dick Nowak would like to say a few things. Nowak?
Thank you for the opportunity to thank you. You will probably never realize what sharing your resources has done for our community. It's incredible. And I would like to pass on the thanks that we get at our department to you, because it all started with your generosity. Chief covered what happened the last 3 years. I'd like to get you started right from the beginning. I actually got involved in 2012, and it was still a mess. The township reacquired the building in 2013, and from 2013 to 16, left to our own devices, we managed to acquire the building, get some plumbing, heating, and water in it, and we formed committees to form committees, and we formed a fire board. That's what we did in 3 years. In the 3 years following, the growth has been exponential. And I will never be able to thank Chief and Bob. You guys have a resource. It is absolutely incredible. I am a resident out there. This impacted the residents more than you will ever know. We lost an institution out there in 2012. Gone. When the township took this department back over, we started about $150,000 or $160,000 in debt with nothing. Nothing. It is amazing, when the chief took over in 2016, I'm amazed he just didn't walk in the building and throw his hands up. The building, he said, a million dead flies. It was trash, dead flies, and nothing else. Nothing. The very first weekend, the chief came out to the department. We had a community work bee out there to shovel the place out and get it at least halfway presentable. Spiders, dead flies, and dust. And I wish you guys would come out at your earliest convenience and see what has happened to that department. You ought to be filled with gratitude, or just, I probably can't come up with the right kind of words to express how I feel and how you should feel, knowing what you have done out there. We will never, we're in your debt, and I don't know what we can do other than say thank you, thank you.
And that's all we have, just looking for your approval to extend 1 more year to finish the job. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Dick. Appreciate you coming and your words. Certainly proud of our fire department and their leadership. Yeah, there was a lot of negative comments at the beginning as to whether this could even work, even inside or outside of 3 years. So it's quite amazing, and certainly appreciate the fact that you have 22 volunteers now, and a lot of the talk then was that you wouldn't be able to get any. So I'm sure that's an attest to your work as well. I don't have any issue. Greg doesn't have any issue with extending for a year. So, if anybody's got any questions or?
No, I just can't say how proud we are of our own department and what they've done for Crestview. It almost makes me want to cry. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, same here. Is just, this is a perfect example of something we've always heard about, cooperation amongst all the townships for fire protection. And I mean, that's exactly what we're looking for, and I think Bill took that baton and just ran with it, with all the help that you've had. So I really appreciate all the work. that you've done for this community, because I have heard from some people in the community. Thank you for allowing that to happen, and the equipment and stuff that you've been able to come up with virtually no funds. So I really appreciate all your work and all the extra efforts on all of the departments. And Mr. Nowak, we do realize what an asset we have in our two captains. So we're very proud of them as well. So I have no issues with this. I think this has been good for the community, and I'm definitely in favor.
So I propose we extend the Presqu'île agreement for one more year for $35,000.
Second.
Johnson?
Yes.
Nielsen?
Yes.
Nowak?
Yes.
Walagora?
Aye.
And Hess.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next is a continuation of use of Mishikiwa's Park by the Alpena Farmers Market for 2019. The memo is from Adam. Did you have the presentation?
Memo together, and I'll probably turn it over to them here shortly. They represented here this evening.
I see.
But my memo indicates they have noted that Mishikiwa's site was last year was their first year, and they said it worked quite well, and they're asking to utilize that location once more. So that being said, as far as specific details, some of it was in the letter, but I will turn it over to them if that's okay.
Okay, sure.
Hello, my name's Deanne Stefanski. I'm here on behalf of the Farmers Market Board as well as kind of all the vendors. So first of all, thank you. Mishikiwa was phenomenal change for us. The past season we experienced new growth, lots of excitement, added exposure and visibility. There was definitely an increase of tourist traffic, something we never had, didn't have very much of before. And then the local foot traffic as well increased. So overall, most all of the vendors actually reported increases in sales. So community as a whole has been supportive and positive for the move. So envisioning 2019 market, we do want to ask permission to use the park again. We understand there's current development plans going on, and NEMCOG's going to be having some meetings for community input. So we want to just kind of express our interest in being included in those meetings for both short-term use of the park and long-term use. So I understand there's some meetings coming up, so we will take it upon ourselves to be part of that, but just wanted to express that to you as well. Some two practical concerns we did want to just bring to your attention that the community and other vendors have brought to our attention is the parking area does get muddy. There's a lot more foot traffic now because we're there. So we may need to consider grading it more often or something like that. The other concern was handicap accessibility for the park. Both those two things we don't really have solutions for, and we know that there's these development plans happening, so hopefully those will address and remedy any of those problems. But I felt we felt that we should at least bring up those concerns. So that's pretty much it. Overall, it's been a very positive move. The community's very excited. It seems very festive down there every Saturday. So thank you, and hopefully you'll have us again. That's about it.
I'm glad it worked out for you. You are correct. I don't know what the timetable is for the updating the park recreation plan.
It's meeting March 12th. We're just trying to find a location, and we'll be able to get a news release on that.
There'll certainly be news release. And I guess just to speak for, I can't speak for Rich, but I know that the road there has been an issue even for the volleyball nights. I'm sure he's here, so he'll.
We're happy to be patient too. It doesn't make sense to do anything, considering there's all these development plans that are going to happen. But even extra, like grading it more often, could even make a difference. Last summer was a really dry summer, and so there is some concern that if it's not a dry summer, it would have been a whole different mess down there potentially. So I'm not sure if you have any thoughts or ideas either, but we're open to it. We can make it work until the plans work themselves out as well.
Can you expound a bit on what you mean by handicap
So
accessibility?
there's concern from a lot of the older customers that there's no solid surfaces, so grass and gravel, which is really difficult for us to address because it's a park setting. So even for like the art shows and stuff that happen in parks, they're lacking that handicap accessibility. Maybe if we're moving forward with development plans and we're involved with them, there could be some sort of more sidewalks, something that would allow for older people that have a harder time walking on grass. We don't have a solution to that problem. It's just something that comes up again and again.
Yeah, okay. All right. Any other questions for Dion?
Thanks, Jan. Just so everyone knows, I'm going to not vote on this matter because I'm a vendor of the farmer's market.
Oh.
So I enjoy being part of it, and so I won't.
Definitely be a conflict of interest.
Yes.
And so I guess our first action would be to allow Councilwoman, I move that we allow Councilwoman Hess to abstain from the discussion and vote.
Second?
Nielsen,
Yes.
Noack,
Yes.
Walagora,
Aye.
and Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. The only question I had was there was some discussion at the beginning during the move for Rich as far as whether this was going to take any kind of a negative impact on the grass there, because it is a park. The farmer's market has been welcome to come twice a week. I believe you're still coming twice a week, but we did have some concern about the grass area of the park or any other negative impact that the farmer's market might have on the park. Any issues with that?
I didn't hear anything from Sean on it. Obviously, with additional foot traffic, there's going to be some wear and tear in the grass, but no worse than anything else surviving last year.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, that's
I think it's been a positive. You've heard positive things from all the different the vendors and the community seem to be involved. I was hoping that there would be a little bit more of tourist type traffic down through that area. Will admit I was a little concerned at first because I've gotten used to it being in the other location and was hoping that it could be successful. And from the feedback that I'm getting, it sounds like it has been. So, I have absolutely no concerns myself in continuing this.
Is there a motion?
It will be just a moment. I move we approve the request from the Alpena Farmers Market to continue the use of Michiga's Park
Second.
For the coming year.
for the coming year.
Yep. Second.
Noack,
Yes.
Walagora,
Aye.
Johnson,
Yes.
and Nielsen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
I move we adjourn to closed session to discuss water and sewer litigation.
Second.
Everybody smile when I know I hate reading that.
Hess,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Nielsen,
Yes.
and Noack.
Yes.